On a bitter cold evening in Haven Ridge, Montana, a battle-worn soldier pulled into a lonely gas station and watched in shock as a 7-year-old girl in a ragged pink dress collapsed at his feet. Her twin sister clutched a torn teddy bear, whispering words too faint for anyone else to hear. The clerk shrugged it off, but the soldier didn't move on. With his German Shepherd, Ranger, standing guard, he carried the child into a storm that would shake the entire town. What he uncovered next wasn't just neglect. It was a secret so heavy it forced even the coldest hearts to bow their heads in silence. The wind tore across the flatlands of Haven Ridge, rattling the rusted sign of a lonely gas station on the edge of town. Silas Ward, 38, a veteran with broad shoulders and the calm demeanor of someone who had seen too much war, finished filling his truck. At his side stood Ranger, a black and tan German Shepherd, tall and steady, his left ear slightly bent from an old scar that only made him seem more alert. Ranger had once served with Silas overseas and now moved with the silent precision of a guardian who had not forgotten his duty. Just as Silas replaced the nozzle, a small figure stumbled toward him. A girl 7, thin, her pink dress tattered, collapsed onto the cold concrete without a cry. Her twin, standing close behind, clutched a torn teddy bear, her eyes wide with hunger and fear. Ranger barked once, sharp and commanding, circling the fallen child as if declaring the emergency. Silas dropped to one knee. "Easy, I've got you." The girl's skin was cold, her breathing shallow. From the station doorway came Harvey Whitlock, a clerk in his 50s, with a weary face and a soda can in hand. He squinted at the child. "Her again. Wanders down from the hill. Seen her by the water tank. Probably just sick." Silas looked up, his voice quiet but cutting. "You used to kids passing out at your feet?" Without waiting for an answer, he lifted the child into his arms. "Call 911. Harvey hesitated, then muttered something and shuffled back inside. Ranger stayed close, tail low, eyes scanning. Silas laid the girl in the passenger seat of his truck, folding his field jacket beneath her head. He helped the twin climb in after, then Ranger leapt to the back seat like a watchful shadow. The drive to Cedar Ridge Clinic was steady, Silas's gaze flicking to the girl every few seconds. Her hands clung to the teddy bear as if it were the last anchor in her world. He had seen this look before, in refugee camps, in places where children learned to survive quietly until survival failed. Yet this was Montana, not Iraq, and still here was a child fainting from hunger. The clinic glowed like a lantern against the dusk. Inside, antiseptic air and fluorescent light washed over them. The receptionist, alarmed, pressed a buzzer. Dr. June Carver emerged, early 40s, hair pinned back, her expression brisk but warm. She had once lost a boy in a remote town to neglect and had sworn never to ignore the quiet cases again. "Put her here," she directed. A young nurse began checking vitals. "Any known conditions?" June asked. "Found her at the station," Silas said. "No ID, I'm not family." "Just the one who was there." "Then tonight," June replied, "you're the responsible adult." The girl was taken behind a curtain. Silas sat with the other twin in the waiting room. Emma, as he later learned, hugged her bear tightly, eyes wary. Ranger lowered himself beside her, resting his chin gently on her shoe. When her hands trembled, he nudged them with his nose until her grip softened. For the first time that evening, she let out a faint giggle when Ranger gave him a comically serious stare, demanding a biscuit. Silas produced one from his pocket and Emma smiled, a small but vital crack in her fear. Minutes dragged. The clock ticked. Posters about flu and hand-washing lined the walls. Silas's mind wandered to old checkpoints, children pressing crumpled notes into his hands, shopping lists, not threats. Promises he had once made to men beside him. No one left behind. He felt that same oath pressing now, not from duty, but from something deeper. June returned with the report. No injuries, severe dehydration, low blood sugar, signs of long-term undernutrition. We've given fluids and glucose. She'll wake soon. She crouched to Emma's level. "Your sister's safe." Then to Silas. "Someone needs to ask who's caring for them." "Hunger like this doesn't happen overnight," Silas nodded, his voice low. "I'll find out." When the girl stirred awake, her eyelids fluttered. The first thing she reached for was the bear. Silas placed it in her arms. Up close, he noticed her bruised knees, the stubborn set of her chin. He covered her legs with his jacket. "You're safe now," he said. Ranger's tail thumped softly as if sealing the statement. From the hallway, Harvey reappeared awkwardly, carrying a styrofoam cup. "Figured someone might want tea." His earlier indifference gave way to a hesitant kindness. June thanked him, handing him a clipboard to hold. Even small acts could shift a man back toward decency. They kept Ellie, as Silas learned her name, for soup and observation. Emma nibbled crackers beside her, still silent but watching every move. Ranger patrolled the room once, then settled with his head on Emma's shoelace, pinning her in the present. Silas filled out paperwork in block letters. Under relationship, he wrote the only truth: present. Later, June handed over discharge notes. Fluids, soft food, rest. But this isn't just an accident. Look deeper. Her eyes lingered, testing if Silas was the kind who would fade. He met her gaze. "I won't disappear." When they left, Haven Ridge felt change. The same storefronts, the same lonely streetlights. But Silas carried more than 2 tired children. He carried the weight of a town's neglect. Ellie dozed against the window. Emma kept her seatbelt steady, and Ranger watched from the mirror. Passing May's diner, the owner waved a bag. "Soup and rolls," she mouthed through the glass, a simple act of community that mattered. Back at the truck, Silas swapped his jacket for the paper sack. "Strict medical orders," he joked softly. Ellie, still weak, shook Ranger's offered paw like signing a treaty. The night stretched cold and quiet, stars hiding behind clouds. Overhead, the hills loomed darker than the sky, but inside the truck there was warmth. 3 fragile lives and 1 loyal dog, bound together by the choice of a man who refused to look away. Morning light hung pale over Haven Ridge as Silas guided the truck up a narrow hillside road. Ellie leaned against the window, exhausted but steadier than the night before. Emma sat upright beside her, clutching the teddy bear like it was breath itself. Ranger watched from the back, alert, his bent ear twitching at every sound. Houses lined the road in weary rows, paint peeling, fences missing boards. Near the top stood a small pale blue house, porch sagging, curtains drawn. The door opened to reveal Marjorie Cole, tall and lean at 41, cardigan faded to the color of storms. Years of long shifts at the laundromat had hardened her face into a mask of control. She looked from the girls to Silas, and then to Ranger, who placed himself squarely between the children and the doorway. "Inside," she ordered. Ellie hesitated, but Emma tugged her sleeve. "No dogs," Marjorie added sharply. "He'll stay out," Silas said, giving Ranger a soft command. The shepherd sat on the mat, posture taut, as if he now owned the porch. "Ellie fainted yesterday," Silas told her. "The clinic said dehydration, malnutrition." Marjorie's lips thinned. "They eat. They're not to wander. Not to the store. Not to the cemetery." She took the bag of soup and rolls Silas offered, but did not thank him. The door closed quietly but with finality. From the porch, Silas noted details. Swept floors but no warmth, curtains pinned shut, a ceramic bell that refused to ring, though the wind pressed hard. Ranger sniffed along the stoop and unearthed a damp spiral notebook hidden under a crate. The ink on the first page bled, but legible. "Mom." Today I tried not to cry. Silas read no further. He replaced it, covering it again like a sacred marker. "We saw it," he whispered. "We won't look away." From across the fence, Viola Hart, 67, retired librarian with auburn gray hair, appeared with a mug in hand. She had a voice warm and husky, and eyes sharp from years of reading children's silences. "You a friend?" she asked. Silas introduced himself. Viola spoke of seeing the girls sharing one coat, waiting by a hydrant, as if for a bus that never came. She remembered their mother, Margaret Reed, shy but bright. Before retreating inside, she accepted Silas's number. "I don't do drama," she said, "but I know when a child is braver than she's fed." Ranger leaned against the fence, chin resting on the slat, and earned a gentle scratch from her. Later, Silas steered the truck toward Birchfield Cemetery, where birches rattled in the wind. There he met F. Talbot, 62, groundskeeper and veteran guardsman, who spoke softly of Margaret Reed's lonely burial. No flowers lingered, he said. It was quiet. The words struck like a muted bell. At dusk, Silas stopped by the library. Mrs. Gorman handed him brochures on CPS, guardianship, and neglect procedures. It isn't always the bruises, she said. Sometimes it's the quiet. Back in his motel room, Silas laid out the papers, wrote down facts, and recorded the house number. Ranger pressed against his shoulder, a reminder that burdens can be shared. Outside on the hill, two children curled against each other in silence. A notebook under a crate whispered of tears unshed, and a man with his dog began the slow work of not looking away. By midweek, the routine had a pulse. Silas's truck idled at the foot of the hill each morning. Ranger poised in the back with his quiet sentry's calm, and two girls in a shared pink coat came down the cracked path like a promise that refused to break. Ellie walked with the measured steps of someone relearning balance. Emma kept the teddy bear tucked beneath her arm like a small passport through unfriendly borders. At Haven Ridge Elementary, the air smelled of pencil shavings and winter boots. Marian Alvarez, 34, Mexican-American, with a neat dark bob and the kind of posture that says both welcome and boundaries, met them at the classroom door. She'd taught in Title I schools in New Mexico before moving north, and a younger brother lost in a training accident had taught her how grief rearranges a family's furniture. Marian's voice was steady as a metronome. "We're working on family portraits today," she said, eyes flicking to Silas and the dog who waited just outside the threshold. "If Ranger stays on the mat, I'll pretend he's a chaperone." Ranger lowered to a sphinx, one paw precisely on the tape line, like a student who reads rules as invitations to show off. When the crayons whispered across paper, Marian noticed what was absent before she named what was present. No ant in the frame, only two girls, a soldier, and a German shepherd wearing Emma's scarf like a knight's banner. At recess, she told Silas quietly, "They're quiet in the way that comes from practice, not temperament." And when I asked who that was, her finger hovered over the soldier in the picture. Ellie said, "The one who doesn't leave." Silas nodded once. Ranger's ear tipped as if he'd been promoted. On Saturday, Silas signed them up for the community center's art class. Tasha Kim, 31, Korean-American, paint under her nails and laughter that came easily like bells in a warm room, ran the program. Daughter of a dry cleaner and a nurse, she had grown up translating bills and doctor's notes, which made her fluent in the art of making hard things feel clear. "No grades here," she told the girls, handing them aprons already kissed by other colors. "Just color and breath." Ranger posted at the door again, as if the class were a checkpoint that good things had to pass through. Midway through the morning, the sky darkened, and rain came hard enough to make the tin roof rattle. The lights fluttered and went out. Tasha clapped once. "Field trip front porch!" She shepherded the kids to the covered entry, but Ranger had already risen, nudging Ellie and Emma forward with a soft flank, guiding them to the safest corner, then sitting broadside to the weather as if breaking wind for a small craft. Emma, cheeks pink with the thrill of darkness, solemnly looped her scarf around Ranger's neck. "Sir Knight," she whispered. He accepted the honor as if he'd been waiting his whole life for it, and the other children giggled. A little storm turned to fireworks. That afternoon, Silas drove the girls home. The pale blue house shrugged off the rain with its usual silence. The ceramic bell did not ring. As Marjorie appeared in the doorway, tall gray cardigan, the tired nobility of someone who believes control is kindness. Ranger's head turned toward the side yard. He sniffed, then looked back to Silas with that particular alertness that had saved men once upon a time. "Stay here," Silas murmured to the girls and cut around the hedge. Behind the house stood a lean-to shed, patched with tin and old campaign signs, its lock replaced by habit, not hardware. Ranger pressed his nose to a gap near the baseboard and pawed once. Inside, beneath a coffee tin on a wooden crate, was a slim golden envelope, the kind stationery stores sell to people who still believe a letter can arrive like a sunrise. Ellie slipped in beside him, small and sure in the way of children on their home ground. "I hid it," she said, voice barely above rain, "for when it's time." On the flap, someone had written in careful block letters, For my girls. Ellie did not open it. She placed it back under the tin with a ceremony that hushed Ranger's breathing and Silas's thoughts. You'll tell me when, Silas said. Not before. Ellie nodded. In the doorway, Marjorie called the girls in for chores in a tone that made every kindness sound like compliance. After dropping them home, Silas steered toward the town library, the one with the brass bell that gave a polite single note when the door swung. Mrs. Gorman, 60s, silver hair pinned in place, ran the desk like a wheelhouse. She had watched people weather marriages, layoffs, and winters, and measured hope in renewals. Local history binders are there, she said, pointing to a low shelf. In the obituary binder, Margaret Reed's notice was brief. Date, road, age. Paper clipped behind it was a yellowed slip in a plastic sleeve. Handwritten and undated. If I'm gone, and if anyone kind has found this among the papers, please don't let Marjorie raise children who are still raw with grief. She is exacting and tireless and good at paying bills, but she does not believe feelings are survivable. My girls need room to speak to me out loud until the world stops shaking. It wasn't legal language, but it was the kind of truth courts often reach by longer roads. Silas read it twice, then copied the lines into his notebook with the tidy printing of a man who knows files must stand up under a stranger's scrutiny. You knew her? He asked. Mrs. Gorman's mouth folded. She whispered more than she spoke, she said. She always returned books on time. By evening, the rain had spent itself into a cold mist. Silas stopped at May's for soup to go, and at the pharmacy for children's vitamins he'd pretend were prizes. He took the long route back past the hill. From the street, he could see the kitchen light on, and the girls' shadows moving like two birds learning safety by echo. Ranger watched the door without whining. Tomorrow, Silas said, meaning a list of things too long for one breath. Talk to Marion about attendance, ask Tasha for notes on the girls, check the county site for guardianship procedures, and decide who might carry a statement that could withstand Marjorie's caution. In the motel room later, he laid out three things as if they were coordinates. The copied lines from the library, the memory of the golden envelope under the coffee tin, and the drawing from school where a soldier and a dog stood shoulder to shoulder with two girls in a world where adults sometimes looked away. He wrote beneath them a simple sentence that had carried him through other nights. Begin with what you can prove. Protect what they are not ready to say. Ranger settled with his chin on Silas's boot, and the room breathed like a small chapel at closing. The snow had already begun to stalk the ridges when Silas carried a folder of notes into the small brick office of William Tate, a retired attorney in his early 60s. William was tall with thinning white hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a suit that looked a decade older than he was. A veteran of the Gulf War before law school, he carried himself with the deliberate pace of someone who had learned to weigh words the way soldiers weigh ammunition. His office smelled of old paper and pipe tobacco, shelves lined with legal texts worn soft from use. Bring me facts, he said simply, and we'll build the rest. Silas laid down what he had. Margaret Reed's handwritten plea against Marjorie, medical records from Dr. Carver confirming malnutrition, a copy of the children's drawings from class, and notes from Viola Hart, the neighbor. William read carefully, nodding. Not enough yet for custody, he admitted, but it's the start of a bridge. That evening, Silas confronted Marjorie on her porch. She was in her cardigan, arms crossed, eyes hard. I give them meals, I keep a roof. That's enough. Silas's voice was calm, steady. The worst harm isn't bruises. It's teaching a child that feelings are a burden. That's what stays longest. For the first time, Marjorie's lips parted as if to answer, but she closed them again and turned away. The ceramic bell above them rattled in the wind, but no sound came. Haven Ridge's winter deepened, and with it, Silas built a rhythm of safety around the girls. May's diner became their small sanctuary. May Thompson, late 50s, heavy-set with kind eyes, always set aside extra soup and bread. In the back booth, the girls learned to write three things they were grateful for each night. Emma listed small certainties: warm socks, Ranger's paw, Silas's truck heater. Ellie struggled at first, but slowly added her own hot broth. A smile from her teacher, a scarf that didn't itch. Ranger lay beneath the table, patient as stone, his nose on his paws. When Ellie's hand shook, he reached out a paw and set it gently on her shoe. She laughed once, calling it his signature of courage. The storm arrived suddenly, roaring down from the pass. Snow whipped across roofs piled knee-high in minutes, rattling shutters like bones. Silas was at the motel when Viola phoned, voice tense. The Cole house front door swinging open. I saw the girls earlier in the yard. Silas and Ranger were already in motion, headlights cutting through white curtains of snow. At the house, the wind howled through the porch, scattering snow like shattered glass. The front door banged against its frame. Marjorie stood inside, shouting at the storm as if volume alone could close it. In that chaos, Ellie had wandered onto the porch barefoot, clutching the teddy bear. The snow blinded, turning the world into a white maze. Emma cried from the doorway, reaching out. Ranger lunged forward first, muscles rippling, head low. He vanished into the storm, barking sharp bursts like beacons. Ellie staggered, lost in the swirl, until Ranger pressed against her legs, guiding her toward the door. His bark rose, deep and insistent, until Silas crashed through the snow, scooping Ellie into his arms. Ranger leapt ahead, reached the porch, and pawed at the ceramic bell, making it chime loud above the storm for the first time. Emma rushed forward, throwing her arms around Ranger's neck, while Silas carried Ellie inside. Marjorie stood frozen, staring at the scene. The soldier, the girls, the dog, her face caught between shame and disbelief. Inside, Silas laid Ellie by the stove. Her skin was cold, but her eyes fluttered open, still clinging to the bear. Emma clutched Ranger, tears freezing on her cheeks. The storm raged outside, but within the dim kitchen a fragile circle of warmth held. Ranger's chest rose and fell like a hearth, steadying the room. That night, as the storm clawed the windows, Silas sat with his notebook, Ranger at his side. He wrote everything: the open door, Ellie on the porch, the bell, the rescue. Each detail mattered, each fact another stone in the bridge William Tate had told him to build. He knew storms end, but truth, when written, outlasts even the deepest snow. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered in the town's silence. Days later, Silas stood at the steps of the Gallatin County Courthouse, its sandstone walls rising solemn against the pale sky. Inside, the air was hushed, the kind of hush that knows it will shape the course of lives. The hearing was closed to the public. A judge in her 50s, Honorable Ruth Elkins, a woman with sharp eyes and a voice softened by 30 years of family law, presided. She had grown up in Billings, the daughter of a coal miner, and had carried into her career a belief that justice should feel both firm and merciful. She adjusted her glasses and opened the file. Margaret Reed's note, Doctor. Carver's report, Viola Hart's testimony, Marian Alvarez's statement, and William Tate's legal brief. The folder looked thin, but each page bore weight heavier than paper. Ellie and Emma were led into a small adjoining chamber for their private interview. The girls wore their matching pink dresses, patched but clean. Emma clutched the teddy bear, its seams re-sewn with clumsy care, while Ellie held a crayon drawing folded in her palm. Caseworker Daniel Moore, late 30s, biracial with a gentle tenor voice, sat with them. Daniel had spent a decade in child protective services, shaped by his own childhood in foster care, where silence was often mistaken for safety. "You can tell me anything," he said. Ellie's voice came out, thin but steady. "We want to be with the one who doesn't make us afraid." Emma nodded fiercely, burying her face against the bear. The words carried across the closed door and settled in every corner of the courthouse like a candle lit against the dark. When the session reconvened, Judge Elkins read slowly from her notes. "This is not about erasing blood ties. It is about ensuring safety. The arrangement is temporary, 90 days. She lifted her eyes, sharp but not unkind. 3 days each week with Mr. Ward under agency supervision. 4 days with Miss Cole with mandatory counseling." The gavel came down, not loud but final. Marjorie Cole sat stiff in her chair. She did not cry. She did not argue. At last she said, her voice a brittle wire, "I thought keeping them fed and in school was enough." I did not know I was teaching them to bury their feelings. That was my neglect. The admission hung in the air. Not redemption, but recognition. Silas inclined his head slightly. Not triumph, only acknowledgement. The girl sat between them, small but no longer invisible. Ranger waited outside, watching every door as though justice could slip away if he blinked. The days that followed became a litany of firsts. At May's diner, the girls ate dinner without hurrying, tasting soup instead of swallowing it whole. At night in Silas's motel room, Ellie slept without jolting awake, her breath steady. Emma whispered stories into Ranger's ear, and he thumped his tail as if answering. One Saturday at art class, Ellie painted two pink dresses, a tall soldier, and a black and tan dog. Across the bottom, in careful, shaky letters, she wrote a single word. Stay. Ranger kept his post faithfully. At bedtime, he stretched out beside the girl's bed, chest rising and falling with the rhythm of a steady drum. His presence was a door left open, a watch kept through the night. Silas sat at the desk, writing in his notebook, recording details for the case, but also the small victories. A laugh that didn't need coaxing, a drawing pinned proudly to the wall, soup finished with a smile. On the final night of the week, Emma asked a question she had been storing in her chest. If we're with you for only 3 days, will you still be here the next time? Silas bent down, voice quiet but certain. I'll be here as long as you need me. Ranger lifted his head, ears pricked, as if to second the vow. The 90 days would stretch ahead with challenges, hearings, and supervision. But that night, the house of their hearts felt different, lighter, if only by an ounce. Love did not shout. It did not blaze. It sat like a soldier at his post, or a shepherd at the door, patient and unwavering. And sometimes that was enough to change the course of a childhood. Sometimes what wounds a child is not hunger or bruises, but the silence that tells them their feelings do not matter. And sometimes what saves them is not a miracle shouted from the rooftops, but the quiet presence of someone who refuses to look away. Silas did not come into Haven Ridge to be a hero, yet by staying, listening, and standing steady, he gave two little girls a reason to believe love can still be trusted. What about you? Have you ever been the one who stayed when someone else was afraid? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story touched you, please like this video, follow for more stories, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next chapter of hope and courage.